So, there I was, elbow deep in a bin of discounted scarves at Maribel's, my workplace, and practically my second home, when I first heard his voice. "Hey, is this the line for the register, or are you just guarding the best deals for yourself?" I popped my head up, a bit annoyed at first. After all, snagging the best bargains required focus. But then I saw him, James, with a crooked smile and a camera slung around his neck. "No line here," I said, standing up and straightening my blouse, a vintage find I was particularly proud of. "Just making sure none of these treasures slip away." He laughed, a nice, easy sound. "Mind if I dive in?" "I'm looking for something to jazz up a shoot. I'm a photographer." "I could tell by the camera," I said, and we both laughed. It was a straightforward conversation, nothing fancy, but it clicked right away. James had an eye for style, which I guessed came with his job. As we talked, he mentioned he was at Maribel's to pick out accessories for a fashion show shoot. I told him about my knack for putting together killer outfits from sale items and leftovers. We chatted more about fashion, photography, and our favorite spots in the city to find hidden gems. Before we knew it, an hour had passed and we were still rifling through the bins together. "You know, you should come to the fashion show this weekend," James suggested. "See what I do with these scarves you helped me pick." I hesitated for a moment. I wasn't used to getting invites to shows, usually just cleaning up after them at the store. But something about James's straightforward manner made me want to say yes. "All right, I'll come. It'll be nice to see the scarves in action instead of folded up in a bin." "Great," he said, his eyes lighting up. "It's a date then." "Well, not a date, unless you want it to be." We exchanged numbers and went our separate ways, but not before he bought a ridiculously flamboyant scarf that I had jokingly suggested. The rest of my day at Maribel's flew by. I couldn't stop thinking about how natural it felt to talk to James. It wasn't just his looks, though. Okay, he was pretty cute. It was the way he seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. And in a world where fashion could be all about the price tag, his appreciation for my budget-savvy skills felt refreshing. The weekend couldn't come fast enough. I found myself looking forward to seeing James again and curious about the fashion show. True to his word, James met me outside the venue, his camera in hand, ready to capture the event. The show was fantastic, the models looked stunning, and the scarves we'd picked out added just the right pop of color. Afterward, James and I headed to a cozy cafe nearby to talk more over coffee. Sitting across from him, I felt a connection that was hard to ignore. We talked about everything, from our favorite bands to our shared passion for thrift shopping. James laughed at my tales of epic sale conquests. "You really have an eye for this," he said, stirring his coffee. "Ever thought of doing it professionally?" "Every day of my life," I admitted. But it's tough to break into styling full-time without the right connections. Things moved quickly after that. Before I knew it, James was introducing me to his family. His parents were warm and welcoming, which eased my nerves a bit. His mom, Linda, hugged me right away, and his dad, Mark, was all smiles as we sat down for dinner at their place. "You have a lovely home," I complimented, genuinely impressed by the cozy decor. "Thank you, dear," Linda replied. We tried to make it welcoming. Dinner was going smoothly until Claire, James's younger sister, walked in. She was the complete opposite of the warm reception I'd received so far. Dressed to the nines, she eyed my outfit, a chic ensemble I'd snagged at a fraction of the cost, and smirked. "So, you're the girl James can't stop talking about," Claire said, her voice dripping with a mix of curiosity and disdain. "I guess I am," I responded, trying to keep the atmosphere light. Our conversation was interrupted by Mark's compliment about my outfit. "You look wonderful tonight, Elise. James tells us you're quite the bargain hunter." Proudly, I said. "Thank you. Yes, I love finding good deals. Makes fashion more fun when it's like a treasure hunt." Linda nodded in approval, but Claire just rolled her eyes. I couldn't stand wearing something so economical. I prefer the finer things in life, not leftovers from a clearance bin. Mark frowned slightly at his daughter's rudeness. Claire, you could learn a thing or two about saving from Elise here. Oh, please, Claire scoffed. I'm not about to pinch pennies and miss out on the best. Life's too short for second-hand silk. The table went quiet. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment. James, meanwhile, just gave Claire a weak smile and didn't say a word. It stung that he didn't stand up for me. After dinner, as we were leaving, I couldn't hold back any longer. James, why didn't you say anything? Your sister was outright rude. He sighed, a look of discomfort crossing his face. Look, Elise, I know Claire can be a bit much, but she's my sister. I have to stick by her, you know? But sticking by doesn't mean you let her walk all over me, or anyone, for that matter, I countered, frustrated. James ran his hands through his hair. It's complicated. We've always been close, and I don't want to stir up drama. Let's just ignore her comments, okay? I nodded, not quite satisfied but willing to let it go for the moment. However, deep down, I knew this was something we'd have to address sooner or later. If things were going to move forward with James, he needed to know that I wasn't just going to roll over and take that kind of treatment, not from Claire or anyone else. Things with Claire went from bad to worse after that dinner. It was like she had it out for me, finding every opportunity to dig into my lifestyle and choices. One sunny afternoon really highlighted the tension between us. I was on my way to check out a sale at a high-end boutique when I heard someone call out in a loud, mocking tone. There she goes, bargain bin queen herself. I turned to see Claire, flanked by her usual entourage, sneering at me from across the street. Her friends joined in with laughter, obviously enjoying the show. Yeah, headed to snatch up another glamorous discount? Claire added, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Keeping my composure, I responded with a calm and clear voice. Actually, yes. They've got a sale on their luxury line, half off today. You guys should check it out, it's a steal. To my surprise, Claire's friends paused, exchanging looks. One of them, a tall girl with sharp features, seemed genuinely interested. Really? Half off? That sounds like a great deal actually. Yeah, let's go see, another chimed in, and just like that, the group crossed the street towards me, leaving a fuming Claire behind. She huffed and stomped her foot, clearly not used to being ignored. But the confrontations weren't limited to the streets, they followed me to work. One particularly busy day at Maribel's, Claire strutted in, her demeanor as haughty as ever. She browsed through the racks of new arrivals, then came straight to the register where I was helping another customer. Hey, I need a favor, she said loudly, cutting off the person I was assisting. Can you give me a discount on this? She asked, holding up a sleek, expensive-looking dress from our latest collection. I'm sorry, Claire, but that's a new arrival. We don't have discounts on the latest collection, I explained, trying to keep my professional tone. Come on, Elise. We're practically family. You can make an exception, she insisted, her voice edged with entitlement. That's not how it works, Claire. I can't give discounts at my discretion, especially not on new stock. Her face turned a shade of red, and her voice rose. That's ridiculous. You're just being difficult because you don't like me. I'm going to talk to James about this. Feel free to do so, but our store policy won't change, I replied firmly, handing her back the dress. She threw the dress onto the counter and stormed out, muttering about how unhelpful I was and how she'd make sure her brother knew about my poor attitude. True to her word, James called me that evening, his tone frustrated. Elise, my sister came home really upset today. Why wouldn't you help her out? She just wanted a little discount. James, you know I work in retail. I can't just hand out discounts. It's against store policy, and it could get me in trouble, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady despite my growing annoyance. But she's my sister. Can't you just make an exception this once? He pressed. No, James, I really can't. It's my job on the line. You wouldn't want me to compromise my work, would you? I countered. We ended the conversation there, but the issue remained unresolved. The constant tug-of-war over Claire's expectations and my refusal to bend the rules was straining not just my relationship with her, but with James as well. After the discount debacle, I did my best to keep my distance from Claire, but family dinners made that nearly impossible. At each gathering, she seemed more intent on flaunting her latest conquest, a wealthy guy she'd started seeing. She'd throw around comments about the lavish lifestyle she was expecting, each one feeling like a tiny jab at my more modest ways. During one such dinner, she was bubbling over with details about her upcoming wedding plans. "Oh, you wouldn't believe the size of the diamond he's getting me. It's simply massive," she boasted, making sure everyone at the table could hear. James, sitting next to me, chimed in with genuine enthusiasm. "Yeah, sis, make sure you snag that guy before he realizes you're way out of his league." He laughed, nudging her playfully. The conversation drifted to other topics, but the undercurrent of Claire's bragging lingered. It was clear she loved the spotlight. Meanwhile, James turned to me with a softer expression once we were alone in the car. "You're quiet tonight. Everything okay?" he asked, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "I'm fine, just thinking about our own plans," I said, forcing a smile. His eyes lit up. "Speaking of which, I've been meaning to ask you." He trailed off, and I felt my heart skip a beat as he pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. "Elise, will you marry me?" he said, opening the box to reveal a beautiful, simple ring that was perfectly my style. Tears sprang to my eyes, not just from the joy of the moment, but also from relief. "Yes, James, of course, I will." We spent the next few months deep in wedding planning. I threw myself into every detail, designing the style of the celebration with a keen eye. I ordered a special wedding dress with a large bow, something unique and stunning. I sketched and planned each aspect of the decor, from the photography areas to the table settings, ensuring everything followed a cohesive, elegant theme. At home, I spread out my designs on the living room floor, poring over fabric swatches and invitation samples. James watched, impressed with my dedication. "This is going to be incredible, Elise. You have such a great eye," he said, leaning over to examine a sketch of the archway I designed. "I just want it to be perfect. I want our guests to feel as special as we will on that day," I replied, my eyes scanning the room, imagining how it would all come together. We kept all the plans and sketches in a folder at home, a folder that became more stuffed with ideas and confirmations as the days went by. Every now and then, James would flip through it, nodding approvingly at my latest additions or suggesting little tweaks. Things started to feel rushed when Claire announced her wedding date, which was suspiciously set for 2 months before mine. I couldn't help but think she was trying to upstage me. Meeting her fiance, a polite guy from a wealthy background, I figured he didn't really know what he was getting into. He seemed nice enough, but oblivious to Claire's competitive streak. One afternoon, I was out shopping with Linda, my future mother-in-law, trying to pick out some last-minute decorations for Claire's wedding, as well as some items for my own. We decided to take a break and grabbed some coffee at a nearby cafe. Linda stirred her coffee, looking a bit distressed. "I just don't understand Claire sometimes. She's leaving everything to the last minute. It's like she doesn't care about the details at all." I nodded, sipping my own coffee. "Yeah, it's a lot to pull together a wedding." Linda gave me an awkward smile. "I hate to impose, especially with your own wedding coming up. But maybe you could give her some advice? She seems to respect your style, even if she doesn't show it." "I can try," I said, though the thought of working closely with Claire on anything filled me with dread. The opportunity came up at a family dinner later that week. The atmosphere was tense, as usual, thanks to the underlying rivalry that Claire seemed keen on fostering. During dessert, Linda brought up the topic. "Elise has been doing such a wonderful job planning her wedding," Linda began, casting a meaningful glance my way. "Maybe she could give you some tips, Claire?" Claire, who had been halfway through bragging about her honeymoon plans, paused and looked at me. Her expression was hard to read. "Thanks, but no thanks, Mom. I've got it covered." Relief washed over me, and I quickly chimed in. "Of course, whatever works best for you." Yeah, I want my wedding to be unique, you know? Not like anyone else's, Claire added, a bit pointedly. The conversation moved on, but the jab lingered in the air. I just shrugged. If Claire wanted to take on everything herself, that was fine by me. Less drama to deal with. As the days ticked down to Claire's wedding, I threw myself into finalizing my own plans. My days were filled with calls to vendors, fittings for my dress with the large bow that I adored, and meetings with the decorator to ensure every detail was perfect. The moment I arrived at Claire's wedding venue, my heart sank. It was like walking into a mirror image of the wedding I had been planning for months. The floral arrangements, the decor, even the small touches I'd prided myself on choosing were all there, as if lifted straight from my sketches. Can you believe this? It's all so gorgeous, Linda exclaimed, completely unaware of the origin of the designs. I barely managed a nod, my eyes scanning the setup. It was more than just resemblance, it was a carbon copy. My mind raced, trying to understand how this could have happened. Then, Claire and her fiance made their entrance, and my breath caught in my throat. She was wearing the exact dress I had custom ordered, down to the last detail, and clutching the bouquet I had so carefully designed. The sight was a gut punch. I pulled my phone out and dialed James, my hands shaking. James, where are you? We need to talk. Now. He picked up, his voice strained. Hey, I'm at the back with the guys. What's up? How could Claire's wedding look exactly like what we planned? The decorations, her dress, even the flowers, how, James? There was a pause, a moment of silence that felt like an eternity. Elise, it's all a misunderstanding. You're overthinking it. Overthinking it? I could hardly believe what I was hearing. I needed answers, and I needed them now. Ending the call, I marched over to where Linda was standing with Claire and her groom, just as another relative was gushing about the decor. It's just stunning, Claire. The creativity here is amazing. How did you come up with all this? They asked, their voice filled with admiration. Claire glanced at me, her smile faltering for a moment before she regained her composure. Oh, you know, I've been planning this for months. Wanted to keep it a surprise. I couldn't hold back. Really, Claire? When did you start planning? Because it looks exactly like the plans I have at home. The ones I showed to James. The area went quiet. Heads turned. Claire's face turned a shade of red, but it was James's reaction that caught my attention. He hurried over, his expression pleading. Elise, let's not do this here. It's her big day, he whispered, trying to lead me away by the elbow. Ignoring his attempts, I pressed on. No, James. I want to know why my wedding, our wedding, has been replicated here today. Linda, looking between us, finally spoke up. What's going on? Elise, are you saying these are your ideas? Yes, I said firmly. Every single one of them. And the dress. That's my dress, the one I chose for our wedding. The crowd murmured, and Claire's husband looked between us, confusion written all over his face. James finally spoke, his voice calm but cold. Elise, the wedding is months away. I thought it wouldn't matter. Claire liked the ideas, and it saved money. The guests watched, some with open curiosity, others with discomfort. Linda looked devastated, her hands covering her mouth. I stood there, the weight of the betrayal sinking in. Not just Claire's, but James's, the man I was supposed to marry, who had so casually handed over my dreams to appease his sister. James, how could you think it's okay to give my wedding dress to your sister? I demanded, my voice sharp enough that it drew more eyes toward us. It's just a dress, Elise, he replied, his tone dismissive, which only fueled my anger. You can wear it again, and no one will remember by the time we have our wedding. It's not a disposable item. My shock at his response was palpable. Not disposable? That's not the point, James. It's about respect, about the promises we made to each other. How could you disrespect me like this, for her? I gestured toward Claire, who stood a few feet away, a smug smile playing on her lips. Seeing my distress, she couldn't resist gloating. I just wanted to look beautiful today, and I did. Thanks for the dress, by the way. It's nice to know I'll wear it before you do, makes it extra special, doesn't it? Her words were like a slap in the face. The crowd murmured, some in shock, others unsure of where to look. I'm not doing this, James. I can't marry someone who thinks so little of me, someone who sacrifices my happiness for his sister's whims, I said loudly, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Before he could respond, his parents stepped forward. Linda looked heartbroken. Mark's face was set in a hard line of disapproval. James, what you did was wrong. You should have stood by Elise, not undermine her, Linda said, her voice tinged with sadness. Mark chimed in, his tone harsh. And Claire, we are ashamed of your actions. Stealing someone else's ideas, gloating about it. That's not how we raised you. Finally, the groom's parents, who had been quietly observing, spoke up, their words grave and full of disappointment. You can't start a family life based on lies, Claire's future father-in-law stated sternly. Hearing this, Claire lost any semblance of control. I don't care about any of you. I'll do what I want, she screamed at her in-laws, her voice shrill and filled with defiance. It was the last straw for her groom. He stepped up to the microphone, his voice loud and clear. I can't do this. I can't marry into deceit. He looked directly at Claire, his decision firm. I'm sorry, but there will be no wedding today. The reaction was immediate. Claire's face crumpled, and she started yelling at him, at her parents, at anyone who would listen. James, ever the peacemaker, tried to soothe her, but the damage was done. His parents looked on, dismayed and disappointed. This is all your fault, Elise. James spat out, his words laced with blame. You ruined my sister's wedding day. No, James, I said, my voice calm but cold. Claire ruined her own wedding day. And you chose not to see what was happening because you didn't want to upset her. I walked out, not looking back, the sound of arguing fading behind me. As I stepped outside, the cool air felt like a balm. I was free from the twisted loyalties and deception that had marred what should have been a joyful occasion. Breaking up with James was like ripping off a band-aid. It hurt like hell at first, but it was necessary for healing. After the disastrous end to Claire's non-wedding, I realized I couldn't just let it all slide. There were too many expenses piled up, too many plans trashed, because of what James did. So, I got myself a lawyer. The day of the hearing, the courtroom was tense. The judge called the session to order, and my lawyer laid out the case, presenting receipts, contracts, and testimony from various vendors. But the turning point came when Linda, surprisingly, agreed to testify. Her presence gave me a jolt of confidence. Linda, can you tell the court about the events leading up to the wedding that didn't happen? My lawyer asked. Yes, Linda started, her voice steady, but filled with regret. My son gave his sister the wedding dress and decorations that were meant for Elise's wedding. It was done without Elise's consent. I was very disappointed. And in your opinion, did this action directly affect Elise's decision to cancel the wedding? The lawyer continued. It did. It was the last straw for her, and honestly, I can't blame her, Linda replied, casting a sad glance my way. The judge nodded, jotting down notes. James's lawyer tried to paint it as a minor misunderstanding, but the evidence was overwhelming. After a long deliberation, the judge ruled in my favor. The court finds for the plaintiff. It is clear that the actions of the defendant led directly to the financial losses and emotional distress suffered by Ms. Elise. With the compensation I received, I did something I should have done years ago. I enrolled in a stylist course specializing in wedding fashion. The money helped me quit my job at Maribel's, giving me the freedom to focus entirely on building my dream career. Months later, my phone buzzed with appointment requests and messages from clients. My services were in demand, my ideas fresh and respected. One afternoon, while arranging some portfolios, my phone rang. It was Linda. Elise, I just wanted to say. I just wish things could have been different, you know, with James and everything. Me too, I said, though part of me wasn't sure. If not for that disaster, I might never have found my true path. Hanging up, I looked around my new studio filled with fabric swatches and glowing testimonials from happy clients. I was exactly where I needed to be, doing what I loved. Sure, the road here was bumpy, but sometimes life's detours lead to the best destinations.